This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is your host, Tim Link, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. Our special guest today is freelance journalist and best-selling author Peter Zheutlin. And Peter's going to talk to us about his latest book, Rescued, what second chance dogs teach us about living with purpose, loving with abandon, and finding joy in the little things. It's a great book. I'm so interested to talk to Peter about the book and his work with rescues and dogs. So it's going to be an exciting time today. Everybody just hang tight. We're going to come right back after these commercial breaks. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
The young lady from the rescue delivered happy, and I panicked. He was missing hair, stinky, scabby, and I thought, what did I get us into? The cause of his issue was poor nutrition. It was neglect. The other owners didn't care enough about him to give him the nutrition he needed. But I have a vet that I trust, and she recommended Dinovite. DINOVITE.com. I ordered the first 90-day supply, and within a couple weeks, his skin started clearing up. He didn't smell. He had more energy. He just had a glow and a bounce about him. We've been using Dinovite for the last year, and Happy the rescue dog is Happy the healthy dog. I tell all my friends who have rescues to give their dog the chance at a new start with Dinovite. It's going to pay off for you and your dog for years to come.
859-428-1000.
859-428-1000.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Joining me today is freelance journalist and best-selling author. His works appears regularly in national publications, including the Boston Globe, Christian Science Monitor, and many, many more locations. We have author Peter Zheutlin on the line with us today. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim. Good to be with you.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Now, we'll start off. We'll talk a little bit about the latest book, which is called Rescued. It talks about second chance dogs, what they teach us, their purpose, and the other joy they bring us. Tell us a little bit about the book and how it came about.
Well, 5 years ago, I would have told you I love dogs, but I really just loved other people's dogs. I was not by any means a dog person. My wife and my kids were on my case for close to 20 years before I finally succumbed to the pressure. I knew nothing about the world of rescue dogs. In fact, when my wife first suggested it, that we get a rescue dog, the image that popped into my mind, quite literally, was a St. Bernard wandering the Alps in search of avalanche survivors. I honestly had no idea what she was talking about. I was on board because I tend to be sympathetic to underdogs in all aspects of life. And once we adopted our first rescue dog, came from Louisiana, survived a high kill shelter, I really wanted to know why we were getting a dog from Louisiana and why I was meeting so many other people here in New England who had dogs from Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, Tennessee. And that led me to write a previous book about the whole world of rescue called Rescue Road, which I spent time sort of in the trenches with the people who do the really tough work of saving these dogs and getting them into what we call forever homes. And that book sort of took the whole process up to the point where those dogs are put into the arms of their new families. And this new book sort of picks up the story in a sense from that point on. It's not just my experience, but it's the experience of so many other families that have adopted a rescue dog and the enormous joy that they've gotten from saving a life.
And it's real interesting, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Obviously, we're big proponents of rescues and rescue organizations, and I'm a former president of a humane society myself, so I'm very familiar with the whole rescue community. I guess, first of all, congratulations on putting up the good fight for 20 years. That's that's about 19 years and 11 months more than I could have done, but that was good.
Well, I had a lot of really good reasons, and one of them was that everybody was promising they were going to walk a dog in the middle of the winter at 5 o'clock, and I knew I would never be able to cash that promissory note. So I just had the feeling that a lot of the burden was going to fall on me. But, I do think ultimately you welcome these dogs into your life at the time that's right for you. And it was the right time for us. It's just been a joy ever since.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about then, you did the research, obviously, in your previous New York Times bestselling book, Rescue Road. How is this book, Rescue, different? Is it a culmination of additional insight and meeting with people compared to Rescue Road, or is it a national progression?
Yeah, I think it is a natural progression. It really, as I said, picks up the story where the other one left off. What happens to these dogs once they come into our homes and into our lives? What challenges do they present? What do they teach us? What does it bring out in us to take a dog, give it a second chance? For me, the experience of having a dog that that otherwise would have died in a high kill shelter just gives me enormous satisfaction. And again, the other book really focused on how this whole process works. It's a little bit chaotic in some cases. It's about the people who walk through the shelters and literally make decisions about dogs they think they can save and which ones they can't, and then the whole process of transporting them from the south to the northeast. In this book, I interviewed families who had taken these dogs in, and there's a lot of commonality to the experience. So it's in some sense a continuation.
There you go. So what additional insight or what additional things have you learned from the first time around and then meeting additional people? Do you still see the trend being heavy where there's a lot of animals that are in need of rescue in the south and being transported to the northeast, or are you seeing it balance out a little bit more, or is there improvements in those areas?
The need for homes is absolutely astronomical. People are shocked when I tell them that in the city of Houston alone, there are more than 1 million stray dogs that live on the street. These aren't even dogs that have made it into shelters. People are under the impression, and it's not correct, that this problem of canine overpopulation or the availability of all these dogs for adoption relates to specific events, whether it's Hurricane Katrina back in 2005 or Hurricane Harvey in Houston this year. This is a chronic, ongoing problem. So there's always an enormous need in other parts of the country for homes for these dogs. Even if you adopted, thousands and thousands of dogs out a year, it'd be a drop in the proverbial bucket. So the need is really great. And this is something I was completely unaware of when we decided to travel down this road to adopt a rescue dog. It came as a big surprise to me.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, those they're not close to the situation don't realize how dire the situation is. And even though I think it's drastically improved over the years, there are more and more people aware, more and more people involved. It's still just scratching the surface on being able to help the rescues and rescue dogs and cats.
Yeah, I think it is true. I think people are much more aware now of the need. In some places, it's almost becoming fashionable to have a rescue dog, kind of a badge of honor. But the need's going to continue for a long time. The numbers are simply off the charts. And if keep in mind that the estimates are that there are close to 700,000 dogs that are euthanized in U.S. shelters every year. That's an enormous number. Fortunately, the number of dogs being euthanized in shelters has gradually been coming down. And some of them, begin to think that, okay, there's got to be an alternative to euthanizing all these dogs. So you find shelter directors and even small parishes in Louisiana, for example, we're trying to think outside the box and not just, okay, I have to euthanize these dogs because I've got another 100 coming in the door next week. Reaching out, forming partnerships, trying to adopt as many out locally as they can. But the demand really tends to be more in the north. In stark terms, this is something of a supply and demand problem, and that's why you've got all these transports bringing rescue dogs to the north and not vice versa.
So when we talk a little bit about the book, the subtitle of the book is What Second Chance Dogs Teach Us About Living with Purpose, Loving with Abandon, and Finding Joy. So how do you summarize that? Are there certain key things that you've learned that woke you up and said, hey, these dogs, we hear about dogs living in a purpose, but these dogs do live for a purpose and in the moment. Tell us a little bit about maybe a couple of the stories that have really touched your heart.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would tell you is that when you talk about the part of the subtitle that says Loving with Abandon, when our first rescue dog came to us, Albie, I was totally unprepared for how deeply in love I was going to fall for this dog and how expansive my compassion was for him. We didn't know a lot about his previous life. We just knew that he had been picked up as a stray. We don't know how long he was wandering alone in central Louisiana, and that he had survived, luckily, in a high kill shelter for 5 months. Well, this is a place where 90% of the dogs are euthanized, and a volunteer took a shine to him and kept him going from week to week until a doctor came along, and that was us. So, my love and my compassion for him were just sort of unbound. And in terms of, living with purpose, for me, when I look at Albie and, think about where he was and that he could have perished on any one of 100 days in that shelter, and then I look at him, sleeping in bed or by the fire, and he's been fed, and he's content, and he's safe, and he's secure. And to me, that just makes the whole relationship with a dog all that more poignant. And for me, it's very meaningful to think, okay, this is a dog that almost certainly would have met its demise if it wasn't for us. And so to watch his joy, when he's running through the woods or, chasing a ball, whatever it is, just gives my life a lot of meaning. In terms of finding joy in the little things, I think one of the things these dogs, and I think this is true of all dogs, really teach us is to be a little bit more present in the moment. It's something we all struggle with. We're thinking about what we did yesterday. We're making plans for tomorrow. We've got a lot on our minds. But I think these dogs force us to kind of try and live at least a little bit the way they do. They don't dwell on the past. They don't make plans for the future. And they kind of call us to be present with them in the moment. When I look at Albie and our other dogs too, and they're totally content with a stick or a tennis ball, and I think, if only human happiness was that simple. I kind of envy them in a sense, the simplicity of their lives. So that I think that touches a little bit on all the aspects of the subtitle of the book.
Absolutely. Well, I think you're spot on right there. I've said that for years, and I tell a lot of my clients that as well, that, animals, no matter what their past was, whether it was a challenging past or just a nice, easy one, they live in that present moment, so they don't hold on to that past, and they don't worry about the future. They focus on that moment and enjoying every single moment. And you're right, that's probably the biggest lesson we can learn as humans from them.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we're going to take a commercial break, and then we're going to come back with Peter Zheutlin, talk to him a little bit more about the book Rescued. Also want to talk to Peter about his writing and writing styles and do some comparisons of what it's like to write for newspapers, magazines, and then publishing books. So everybody hang tight. We'll come back right after these commercial breaks. We're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
Hi, this is Tim Link, animal communicator and pet expert and host of Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Have you ever wanted to know what your pet is really thinking? Do you want to find out if they truly understand what you're trying to tell them? Ever wish you could build a better understanding and closer relationship with your pet? Well, now you can. Learning to Communicate with Animals is a 4-part on-demand workshop. In the workshop, you'll learn the essential techniques that are necessary to communicate with animals, including what is animal communication, breathing correctly to achieve the perfect state to communicate with your animals at a deeper level, using guided meditation exercises and method to communicate with animals, and how to send and receive information from your animals. So if you're wanting to learn how to communicate and connect with your animals at a deeper level, visit PetLifeRadio.com/workshop and purchase and download Learning to Communicate with Animals. You'll be glad you did.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Continue our conversation with Peter Zheutlin, the author of the book Rescued, What Second Chance Dogs Teach Us About Living with Purpose, Loving with Abandon, and Finding Joy in the Little Things. Now, Peter, we talked a little bit about before the break about the book itself and how it came about and your involvement in rescue and helping out rescued animals. What would you say after the listeners pick up a copy of the book and read through it? What would you hope they walk away from after reading the book? Is there a key message or something that you'd say, hey, if they learned this or enjoyed this, then I'd be a happy man?
There are a couple of things. Number one, of course, one of the reasons I've written these books is that I want to encourage people who are interested in adopting or getting a dog or even a cat, but primarily dogs, to think about adopting a rescue dog and giving these dogs a second chance at life. I hope that the books help to dispel the myths, some of which I believe myself that rescue dogs are somehow damaged goods or are going to be, by definition, have behavioral problems and anxieties that other dogs don't have. I think that really is largely not the case. And I think people can be assured that when you work with a reputable rescue organization, they want to set these dogs up to succeed. So they carefully, screen the dogs that they are making available for adoption. And if they're good at what they do, they're also going to be screening the adopters, that is to say, you. I always tell people one sign that you're working with an organization is that while you're checking out the dog, they're checking you out. They may even come out, as we did, and have a home visit. And they want to make a good match, to make sure that the chances of success of the adoption are high. So that's the overall goal. I really want to encourage people to think about going the rescue route. The one takeaway lesson from the book I encourage everybody to really take to heart is that, first of all, don't make an impulsive decision. When you make a commitment to a dog, even if it's a little bit older, 2, 3 years old, or even a senior, you really should be thinking of it, I'm making a commitment to this dog for its lifetime. This is not like buying a mattress and I'll test it out for 30 days and return it if I don't like it. But part of that means being prepared, and this applies to all dogs wherever they come from. Individuals, they have their anxieties just like people do. They have their fears just like people do. Sometimes we don't know why they are the way they are, but be patient, be compassionate, and I would also say let the dog be a dog. Don't expect it to be like a little human being. It may be mad, for example, when the dog drags, a bunny that it's caught, into the house. I mean, I try to save these critters that my dogs sometimes get, but I don't get angry at them. They're doing what comes naturally to them. So the lesson, I think, is, yes, a dog has to learn how to live with people and live in your house, but first and foremost, it's your job to learn how to live with a dog. And I think that's where counseling, patience and compassion really is important.
There you go. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah, oftentimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, but I've seen it happen many of times where, someone brings a new animal home to their home and they expect them to know exactly the routine, where to go, where they should potty, what they should do. And that takes time. The animal has to learn you and your house and your family, and then you have to learn the animal as well.
Unrealistic expectations, I think, are often the reason that adoptions, the most common reason that adoptions don't work out. People don't give it time. They don't really take to heart the message that this is a dog. It has to be allowed to indulge its dogginess, so to speak, and it has instincts, and you don't want to extinguish those. This is what makes a dog a dog. And if and they will return the love that you give them. You get it back 100 times over, because these dogs don't know your faults. They don't know all the things you've done wrong. They greet you like a conquering hero every time you walk in the door. And, they don't judge us. We should be a little less like them.
There you go. I think that's a good message. Good messages. Well, definitely everybody pick up a copy of the book Rescued, and you're definitely going to love it, learn a lot, have some fun with it as well. Now, Peter, I have to talk to you a little bit more about your writing and writing styles. Obviously, you've published regularly for the Boston Globe, so newspapers, Christian Science Monitor, magazines, other publications, and now writing books. Tell us a little bit about how you handle each one differently, or do you go into the task of writing the same way for each one of them? How do those different methods combine?
It's interesting. People often ask writers, about what they call their process. And to me, it's such a subconscious thing. I'm not even aware, frankly, that I have a process other than sitting down and literally typing with 2 fingers, because I never actually learned to type. I would say the main difference between, the articles and essays, more short form journalism, is that it's more of a sprint and a book is more of a marathon. I think people don't realize how long the process can be to produce a book. I tend to write fairly quickly, but most books on average, I think, from conception, or at least in my case, from the time you conceive the idea to the time you actually have a copy of the book in your hand is about 2 years. And honestly, by the time the book comes out, you've already read through it, even before you submit it to the publisher. You've read through it 100 times, and then it goes through copy editing and proofreading it. And so literally by the time your own work comes out, you're so sick of it. You're sure that nobody is going to like it. But, I just tend to write in bursts. I can kind of concentrate for a couple hours at a time and get a lot written. And then I'm a bit tired of it. I can't write for 8 hours a day.
Well, it's funny. It sounds like we have a lot in common. It's more of, whether it's a deadline that's due, that's a big one for me. But for the most part, it's a matter of getting into groove, get writing, and then when I get tired, I stop. And yes, I'm a hunt and pecker as well, with 2 fingers going to town on this thing. But hey, it's worked well for me for years, so that's all right.
Well, I think as long as, if you're writing about things you care about, it comes much easier. If I were writing a technical manual for an automobile or a piece of software, it wouldn't be quite as much fun, to say the least. Writing about dogs to me was kind of a labor of love and a way to take my experience, particularly with Albie, because it's our first rescue dog, and we now have 3, but a way to kind of honor his life in a way. Even from the moment he came into our house, well, maybe not from the moment, maybe a week after he came in, it dawned on me that he wasn't necessarily going to be part of our life forever. And I just wanted to make his life mean something beyond just giving us pleasure, our family. And I think, so many people that I don't even know if they've read the books will say, how's Albie? He's not a Matt Damon, star, but he's got a little celebrity now. And I think it's just been a way to honor everything that he's given to us. So these 2 books about rescue dogs were something of a mission for me, I guess.
Excellent. Well, do you have a preference in types of writing opportunities you have, or is it go with the flow or go with whatever the topic is you're wanting to write about or they're asking you to write about?
I just think it's mainly something that you really think as you're writing a book, that it's something you can live with for a couple of years and, will hold your own interest. I enjoy hearing about the experiences of others, and for Rescued, it's not just my story, it's the story of so many families that have gone through this process. I just try and find things that are drawn from my own life to some extent, experiences that I'm having. The biggest compliment I used to get when I was writing essays for the Boston Globe about raising kids and all the trials and tribulations, they were more humor columns. But the biggest compliment I could get would be somebody would say, "Oh my God, that's my life you just wrote about." So, when people, sometimes it's about giving voice to people, let's say, who don't write, but who've been through a similar experience and validating that experience for them through your writing. I can give you an example if you'd like. I actually helped a very distinguished Boston cardiologist write a memoir when he was suffering from Parkinson's and dementia. Very challenging project. The book was called Life in the Balance. But we got so many letters from people, caregivers who were taking care of people suffering from similar ailments. And I think it's a great comfort for other people to have someone put into words the experience that they're living. And that to me is the most gratifying part of it.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. I mean, obviously, what you write, whatever it is, has to touch and resonate with people. And I enjoy getting those emails and those salutations, especially from the people who said, "Wow, I thought I was the only one out here."
Right,
and
exactly.
And let them know that they're not. So that's great. All right, Peter. Well, where can people follow your journey and book tours and all your events and all your writing? Well, how's the best place to keep track of you?
The best place would be, I have a website. It's Peter Zheutlin. I'll spell it. It's Peter, my first name, and ZHEUTLIN, PeterZheutlin.com. I put all the events, book talks on the events page. I also have an author page on Facebook. It's the same name. Those are probably the 2 best ways.
All right, then. Super. We'll make sure we get that posted so everybody has that as well. So congratulations once again. The latest book's called Rescued, What Second Chance Dogs Teach Us About Living with Purpose, Loving with Abandon, and Finding Joy in the Little Things. It's Peter Zheutlin putting together another great book. Peter, congratulations again, and we'll look forward to talk to you again somewhere down the road.
Great. Thanks so much, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Well, we're coming to the end of the show today. I want to thank everyone for listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. I want to thank our producers and sponsors for making this show possible. And if you want to be on the show and have a conversation with me, well, put it down in a blog, an article, or write a book, and who knows, you may be the next guest on Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Everybody have a great day.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.